Hey everyone, this is Kunal and today I have a review of the Ferrocore version 2. This product is a collaboration between the Cubicle, Cubehead and MoYu, and let's get right into it. So before I get into the performance, this is a modified version of the Waylong V11. So naturally, as you can see, the size is the same, the shades are also extremely similar. However, there are a couple of stylistic differences which I personally really like. The first being that this is available in a matte finish as well as a UV coated finish. This is really good for solvers such as myself who actually prefer the matte finish. Also, I'm personally a very big fan of the grey internals. This might just be me, but a cube with darker internals just has the colors pop out a little bit more and it helps me with recognition. Also, unlike other versions of the V11, this cube comes equipped with a metal core, which apart from a few performance changes, also serves to make the cube a lot more durable because the V11 is known to have some core breakage issues, which this cube is not going to have. Now, jumping into the turning of the cube, the turning is actually not particularly similar to other V11s. It has a similar speed out of the box. It is a very fast cube naturally. However, it is a little bit more cohesive and more well put together. I've personally never been a fan of any of the stock V11s. They've just felt a little bit too flimsy for my liking. And this cube does feel a little bit more robust, a little bit more coherent. It could be because of the stronger magnets in the cube, which I will talk about a little bit. And overall, the feel is amongst the most satisfying that I've tried in any MoYu cube. Talking about the actual performance of the cube, since the cube is based off the V11, a lot of the features are going to be extremely similar, namely the very good corner cutting and overall pretty fluid turning of the layers, as you can see. However, there are a couple of key differences and I've already talked briefly about one of those, which is the magnet strength. The magnets on this cube are really strong, which is something you would have seen in the Cubicle's overview of this cube as well. But it's not really strong to the point of it being intrusive. Like, while I'm turning, it doesn't really feel like the layers are snapping harshly into place. Rather, it just feels like it's allowing me to turn a little bit more accurately. My biggest problem with the stock V11 was that the magnets felt too weak for me. And so I'm glad that that has been fixed on the Ferrocore. Another interesting thing to note about this cube is that it's not really a cube that feels heavier than other V11s. Even though it is heavier due to the metal core, I think because of the weight distribution and the weight being mostly concentrated in the center of the cube, the turning itself doesn't feel particularly heavy or substantial. And that's something I really like because one of my biggest concerns with the Ferrocore version 1 is that to me, it did feel substantially heavier than the stock V10. I don't know if any steps have been taken to particularly alleviate this, but this cube does feel a lot more pleasant and not really heavy, so I can do long sessions on this with absolutely no problem. Even compared to my current main, which is the 18th anniversary V11, it doesn't really feel a lot heavier in the hand, even though it gives a slightly different hand feel. So I think that gets most of the key features of the cube out of the way. It has a really nice satisfying feel, it comes really fast out of the box, it has strong magnets, and despite the metal core and the heavier weight, it doesn't really feel heavier. Now let's talk a bit about how this compares to other MoYu flagships. One small thing I would like to clarify is about why I will not publish an unboxing video of this cube. To be completely honest, my first impressions of this cube were pretty bad. It was uncontrollably fast out of the box, of course on the loosest tensions, and the magnets at that level of speed felt way too snappy for me. I couldn't even string together 2 to 3 turns without a lockup. In my opinion, this is a cube that requires a bit of setup to be really good, but it's absolutely worth it. So my current settings on the cube are 3 and 3 for the tension and compression, and as for the lubricants, I've used Pilot Blue, Pilot Yellow, and a touch of Angstrom Dignitas. This setup works extremely well for me. It gives the cube a more manageable speed without slowing it down too much, and it gives it a slightly softer feel, which I really like. So along with the Ferrocore V2, here I have the V11. This is of course the 18th anniversary edition, the Super Waylong version 2, and the Super Oolong. Now in my eyes, the V11 and Super V2 are very similar performing cubes. They're nice and light and flexible, but the Super V2 has more adjustment options and generally feels like a more polished product. The Super Oolong is not that different from these two cubes, however it does have a slightly blockier feel, and of course one of my favorite characteristics of the cube is that it comes with matte plastic similar to the Ferrocore version 2. Now the Ferrocore does of course share a lot of characteristics. from the stock V11 versions. However, in my opinion, it's kind of like a mix between the V11 and the Super Oolong, because it's not quite as flexible as stock versions of the V11. These ones are pretty flexible and forgiving in terms of corner cutting, whereas the Super Oolong has a definitive blocky feel, which makes it a little bit more rigid and less forgiving compared to the V11 and the Super V2. And in my eyes, the Ferrocore version 2 is like a perfect blend between these. It definitely is closer to something like the V11. However, it does share some of the blockiness characteristics from the Super Oolong. And I personally really like this because my main currently is between these two cubes. So this is like a perfect blend between them. Now, before I wrap up this review and comparison, one important thing that I want to talk about is that when this cube released, I was actually one of its biggest skeptics because of the incredibly aggressive marketing behind this cube. I'm personally not a fan of such aggressive marketing, and that made me a little bit suspicious about whether the cube was actually as good as was being claimed. So I absolutely had to get one for myself, and I'm going to eat my words now. This cube is absolutely incredible. It's by far one of the most satisfying feeling cubes I've ever tried. Like, I literally sat down yesterday and I did 300 solves in a single sitting on this cube, which is almost unheard of for me now because I just can't maintain long sessions on other cubes. But this cube is just so enjoyable to turn, and of course it has the performance to match. Now, whether it's going to be my main, it is a potential main, and I am using this cube the most right now. However, of course, the true test will be in a competition setting. I will be competing at the end of next month, so I'll be sure to give this cube a spin. For me, my main is between these two cubes primarily, the V1 18th anniversary edition and the Ferrocore version 2. So this cube absolutely stacks up to other flagships. It's absolutely worth the hype, and if you guys can get your hands on it, I highly recommend trying it out. Now, I'm going to share some of my solves on this cube, and then of course Viraj is going to share some of his thoughts as well as his solves on this cube. That's all for this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.
Hey guys, what's up? It's me Viraj here, and today I'm going to talk about my opinion on the Ferrocore V2. So the Ferrocore V2 is a very nice and enjoyable cube to use. It's a cube I'm able to push my TPS on, and I'm able to turn pretty fast on it, but I'm still able to control my turning and turn slower. The cube has stronger magnets than most cubes, but I like it, and the magnets don't feel too strong to turn. Like, you can't feel the bump when doing U2s and R2s. For some reason, the cube just feels like free to turn, and it feels like there's freedom, and it doesn't restrict my TPS. At first, the cube was definitely too snappy and springy for me, but that was before I looped the core. After I looped the core, it felt way better, and it actually changed the cube a lot and made it feel glidey and smoother, and it feels really different. But after I got used to it, it felt better. And since the cube also has an iron core, the weight distribution is different, and it takes some time to get used to. It feels really different at first again, but once you get used to it, it feels pretty much the same. Overall, the cube, it's a really good cube. It's main worthy. I'm going to try it in comp. And yeah, the only problem I can think of is it's hard to switch to this and away from it because it's so different to other cubes. Bye. Thanks for watching.